Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the game review to Everton's 2-1 defeat to Aston Villa last Saturday. Frank Lampard suffers his second defeat in a matter of games this season after travelling down to Villa Park on Saturday afternoon. Early kickoff, of course, Saturday afternoon, and falling to a 2-1 defeat to Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa. A game in which Everton weren't particularly very good in. Don't get me wrong, I don't think we were particularly awful either. I think it was a game of two poor teams sort of battling it out against each other, and Aston Villa just so happened to have a little bit more going forward than what we did. First of all, they had a natural striker on the pitch, which of course was something that Everton did not. And unfortunately, Everton ended up walking away from the game with very, very little. And I actually think we were quite poor in the game up until the last 10 minutes or so, when we actually give it a go and got at Aston Villa and started to try and get back into the game. It almost seemed like at 1-0 down, we didn't really have much. We didn't really have much intensity. We didn't really have much urgency. There wasn't really any indication that we were going to get back into that game. And then as soon as it went to 2-0, all of a sudden, we picked ourselves up. We went and got one back almost instantly. And then for the last 5 or 10 minutes of the game, we really, really pushed. And I almost feel like, and I said this in the instant match reaction, I almost feel like had there have been an extra 5-10 minutes in that game, we would have gotten an equaliser, which is frustrating because we were down 1-0 for the best part of an hour and we never looked like equalising or getting at Aston Villa or causing them any real issue, really, until we went down to 2-0, and then that's when, we stepped our foot on the gas a little bit. But for me, I think Frank Lampard got it wrong on Saturday. I really, really do. I think Frank Lampard got it wrong. I think starting with the front three that he did, obviously being the same front three that started the week before against Chelsea, knowing how poor that front three was against Chelsea, knowing how ineffective that front three was against Chelsea. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and start pointing fingers. I'm not going to sit here and start, throwing blame about, because we're only, 2 games into the Premier League season and there's still a long, long, long way to go. There's still 36 games to be played. I said it, last week, I'll say it again. After 3 games last season, Arsenal hadn't picked up a single point and they ended up finishing just outside the top 4. So, we are very early on in the season, but also B, the players that are ultimately playing in those areas are playing out of position. Anthony Gordon has been played out of position. I think there's an argument that Damari Gray and Dwight McNeil's position is being compromised as well because of that lack of striker. But that's when it's down to Frank Lampard to change it up a little bit. That's when it's down to Frank Lampard to, try something different. And, okay, you could sit here and say maybe his hands were tied behind his back a little bit, against Chelsea last week because, Solomon Rondon obviously was out with a suspension. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, we know, is out injured. And whilst we all sat here and thought it would be Dele that would be given the opportunity, obviously we found out against Chelsea that Dele wasn't preferred for whatever reason. Some of the rumours going around at the moment would suggest that it may be because the manager just doesn't think he's good enough or doesn't think he's up for task, and that's why, he looks likely to leave the football club over the next week or so. But for Frank Lampard to go with that same front three again on Saturday, whilst having Solomon Rondon available, and look, don't get me wrong, Solomon Rondon isn't the striker we want to all be, hanging our hopes on, and ideally Solomon Rondon wouldn't be, the player that we're all sort of sitting and wishing was starting a game of football for Everton, because he's simply not good enough. The title of this live stream reads exactly how I'm feeling at the moment. We are absolutely desperate for a striker, desperate for an out-and-out goal scorer. In fact, I think we need 2, and if we can't get 2, we absolutely need 1, and then 1 player that can play across the 3, and maybe that's where, the sale of Anthony Gordon, if that is to happen, maybe that's where that makes a little bit of sense, because it allows us to go out there and buy a couple of strikers that will significantly improve this team. And look, we're not going to talk too much on Anthony Gordon today in terms of whether or not he'll be at the club, in the coming weeks, because we've not really heard much of an update today, so it would only be repeating what we said yesterday, and B, this is obviously the review, this isn't a transfer video. But I sort of looked at that starting 11, and I expected the changes that were made in terms of Connor Cody and Mason Holgate in there. Absolutely right to bring Mason in. Thought he'd done really well against Chelsea from what he had, and obviously the expectation was that Connor Cody was to start, but that wasn't the issue. The issue I had was that Frank Lampard went with the exact same front three when he had another option, and the other option, although we mightn't be, the player we want to see leading Everton's line, and although we all know, we need a striker, and I think the board know we need a striker, and the manager knows we need a striker. We didn't have a striker other than Solomon Rondon on Saturday, so he should have started for me. And ironically, when he come on, the game changed for Everton. We looked a lot better. We looked a lot more threatening. We looked a lot more likely to score. Now, was that because Solomon Rondon was taking the ball down and having shots from 20, 30 yards and making the goalkeeper work? No, it wasn't. In fact, his individual performance in terms of being a striker and, scoring goals or getting in good areas, it wasn't particularly great. But what he does is he offers a big target man, a big unit for us to lump the ball up to. And what we saw on Saturday was the same thing we saw against Chelsea. And it was James Tarkowski, Mason Holgate, and now Connor Cody lumping the ball up to a front three, of whom have got about as much aerial ability as me nan, and she's 5'1" and 85, 86 years old. None of them can head a ball. None of them can jump in the air and console a ball. I'm talking Damari Gray, Anthony Gordon, Dwight McNeil. None of them are, forget specialists in the air. None of them are even competent in the air. And that's just the way it is. They're wide players, they're wingers. They don't really need to be that great in the air. But when you're playing them as a front three, and when your tactic is for, if the midfield haven't got the ball, i.e. Iwobi or Doucouré, and there's not a pass on, when your tactic is for your defenders, and it is this way because we've seen Tarkowski do it a number of times in pre-season, we've saw Mason Holgate do it a number of times as well, Connor Cody seemed to do it, to lump the ball up. You simply cannot do that if you have not got a target man. It works with Dominic Calvert-Lewin because he's the best header of the ball in the Premier League. He's one of the best aerial attackers in world football. So it works. Does it work as well with Rondon? Not as well as it does with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because there's a clear difference in quality between Solomon Rondon and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. But it works much better with Rondon than it does with Anthony Gordon or Damari Gray or Dwight McNeil. And you've seen that when Rondon come on. You saw that all of a sudden those balls that were getting lumped up were getting knocked on, or were getting brought down, or were getting consoled, and were bringing other people into the game. All of a sudden, it wasn't just a nonsense ball lumped up and Villa's defence were taking it down and getting it back. It was a ball that was lumped up and Rondon was putting himself in the way. Rondon was making himself a nuisance, and then it was getting laid off to, Onana or to Tom Davis or to Iwobi or whoever else was in the frame at that time. And that for me, was the biggest mistake that Frank Lampard made at the weekend, was starting the same front three, because them front three could be playing together now, and we're 5 days on from the game, 4 days on from the game, they could still be playing now and they wouldn't have scored a goal, because there's just not enough there. There's no natural goal scorer in any of them. Not one of the three is a prolific goal scorer. Damari Gray has scored goals, the odd goals, 3 or 4 a season maybe on average. Anthony Gordon 4 last season, but it was his first season. Dwight McNeil, not a prolific goal scorer. None of them are goal scorers. None of them are, as I said, are forwards. None of them are strikers. So, and we saw that against Chelsea. The biggest sort of most blatantly obvious thing against Chelsea was that we didn't have any goals in the team, and this is my worry at the moment with Everton. And I am a little bit worried. Listen, I sat the other day and said that I'd try not to worry too much about things like this, because we could be sitting here at the end of the transfer window with 2 new strikers in who are great goal scorers and are great in the air and can bring it down and can work the way we want to work. So I try not to stress myself out about it, but that's more my outlook on life at the moment, is very much try not to stress out about things that you can't really control. But I can't help but worry that the way things are looking at the moment, it almost seems like Everton's tactic at the minute is don't concede, because the minute we concede, it's like, how are we going to score in here? Because we just don't have enough. We don't create enough. We don't, we haven't got enough quality going forward. And when Frank Lampard's persisting with a front three of 3 lads who none of whom are strikers, and none of whom can play the way he wants to play, it's a worry. Now, will that be the same case on Saturday? Well, one thing's for sure, I think if Frank Lampard plays the same front three on Saturday, he's incredibly stupid, and that'll be the first massive criticism I'll have of Frank Lampard since coming in as Everton manager. I've had little criticisms of him, of course, because he's made mistakes, but the first massive criticism I'll have of him is if those front three play together on Saturday against Nottingham Forest. Whether they'll even be able to play together on Saturday is a different question. Anthony Gordon might even be an Everton player by Saturday, depending on how things go over the next couple of days. But that for me was Frank's biggest mistake on Saturday, was persisting with a front three that showed the week prior that they're just not, it just didn't work. It simply didn't work. And that's fine. He tried it against Chelsea. It didn't work. Absolutely fine. No issue with that whatsoever. You don't do it again. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I could have told you at 11:30 when that team news was announced that those front three would be absolutely useless. And they were. They were absolutely useless all afternoon. And it doesn't help because, as I said, it's worrying. It's worrying that our tactic at the moment, given the business we've done in the transfer window so far, and given the way we've started the season, very much seems like defend, don't concede, and when you do concede, it's almost like, shit, where do we go from here? Because defensively at the weekend, I thought we were relatively solid. Yes, we conceded 2 goals that were avoidable. I think the first is incredibly avoidable. The second is, for me, just silly. But for the most part, we defended everything else relatively solid. We had a good structure. We had a good back line. I thought Vitaly Mikalenko wasn't at his best, but still wasn't particularly awful. I thought Nathan Patterson was excellent. I thought Connor Cody's debut was decent. I thought Mason Holgate, for the most part, was decent. Same with James Tarkowski. So it's clear that the manager is trying to create this defensive structure to avoid conceding goals, which is great. You know, the aim of football is to score and don't concede. That's how you win games of football. And ultimately, you know, the only reason we're all here talking about Everton is because we want Everton to win games of football. None of us are sitting here saying, I wouldn't mind if we draw on Saturday, or I wouldn't mind if we lose on Saturday. We're all sitting here because we want to win games of football. So having a game plan and setting a defence up to avoid conceding is absolutely right. But you've got to have something, you know, the other end of the pitch. It's got to be a double-edged sword. You've got to be able to score goals as well, because this Everton team is still very, very, very prone to conceding goals. We've conceded 3 in 2 games. Now, okay, you could say, you know, again, a couple of them have been avoidable and mistakes. And, you know, obviously the one against Chelsea was a penalty, which is, you know, again, not a goal from open play. But the reality is we've still conceded 3 goals in 2 games, even though we're clearly more of a solid defensive unit than what we were previously. And in that same amount of time, we've not scored a goal. And to be perfect, we've scored 1 goal, which obviously was an own goal that come off Luca Dean. You know, ironically, our top goal scorer this season is a player that left 6 months ago. But I think that is a big, big problem with Everton at the moment. And I don't think anybody will disagree. And I don't think there's any hiding it whatsoever. The reality of the situation is we need a striker, and we need a striker in ASAP. Now, whether we'll have a striker in before Saturday, I don't know. It isn't looking like that's going to be the case at the moment, is it? Let's be honest, because we're on Wednesday night at 9:30 at night, and we still haven't got a striker in. So it doesn't look like that's going to be the case, which is a worry, because, you know, how do we line up? I would assume Rondon will start on Saturday, which, again, I would agree with. In an ideal world, you know, obviously we'd have somebody better there, but if we haven't got a striker in through the door by Saturday, then Rondon has to start, because we haven't got any other natural striker at this club. So, you know, you might see Iwobi converting back to being on the wing, depending on if Onana comes in or if the Ghana gate deal's done by then, and, you know, obviously depending on what goes on with Anthony Gordon. But I was quite shocked, and I must admit I was very critical of Frank Lampard for starting with that same front three, because it didn't work the week before, and it was clear that it wasn't going to work again. So I don't really understand the thought process behind trying it again. Maybe Frank thought, you know, we're against a weaker opposition, you know, they're a week on into the season, maybe it will work. It didn't, and it never will work. So that was the first mistake, I think, with the team news. As I said, I agreed with everything else. Couple of changes made. I wasn't surprised that Amadou Onana didn't start, if I'm being honest with you. I wasn't surprised at all. And I think Everton started the game relatively okay. Don't get me wrong. Aston Villa were the team with the more possession. Aston Villa were the team that looked more likely to threaten our goal. Aston Villa were the team that was certainly in control of the game. Sorry, I've got something stuck in my throat. In control of the game a lot more, but I think that was because we allowed that to happen. I don't think it was a case of Aston Villa absolutely, overrunning us or completely, controlling the game and it being out of our hands. I think we were comfortable with them having the ball. I think we were comfortable with them doing what they were doing. I think defensively, in the opening, as I said, 15, 20 odd minutes, we looked comfortable. We looked, like we weren't necessarily troubled. Jordan Pickford didn't have an awful lot to do. Everything Connor Cody had to do, he dealt with. Everything James Tarkowski had to do, he dealt with. Same with Mason Holgate. We looked like we were, again, employing this tactic of defend, and hope we can hit them on the counter-attack. Now, that's the only reason I can think of to have those front three is because I think the aim on Saturday was that we defended for 90 odd minutes, and then if we got an opportunity on the counter attack, we used the pace of Gray, the pace of Gordon, and maybe the quality of McNeil to try and create something from that. But that doesn't work when Anthony Gordon's running into players with the ball at his feet, or Damari Gray is getting tackled because he's not he's not using his brain, or he's not making the right decisions. It doesn't work. That only works when you've got clever players in a counter attack that can create opportunities even when need be. Whereas at the moment, and again, I'm not saying it's particularly their faults because they're being played out of position, but Damari Gray and Anthony Gordon can't do that at the moment. They couldn't do it against Chelsea, and they couldn't do it against Aston Villa. But as I said, Villa are controlling the ball, they're controlling the play, they're moving it round, but Everton are looking relatively comfortable. It wasn't the most entertaining, first 20 odd minutes of football. It was absolutely boiling at Villa Park. I must admit, it was about 87,000 degrees. We were sat right at the top of the away stand, in the top section of the away stand. We were sat right at the top of it, and yeah, it wasn't the most entertaining. I think people were starting to get a little bit frustrated at the lack of sort of effort, the lack of sort of attacking presence we had in the game. And if you actually look at the stats, Everton had 15 shots at goal compared to Aston Villa's 12. Both teams had 4 shots on target. Possession was fairly even, 58 to 42%. So it was quite an even game of football, and as I said before, for me, it was a game of football between two teams that aren't particularly very good. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I mean absolutely no disrespect to Aston Villa, because I actually quite like Aston Villa as a football club. I hate their manager, but I absolutely quite like Aston Villa as a football club, but they're not very good. This whole myth of they're going to be, a challenger for Europe this season, and they're the best team out of, everybody else, I just don't understand it. I just simply don't understand where it's coming from. I don't think they're very good whatsoever. Yes, they've got 2 or 3 really, really good players with a lot of talent that will drag them through games, but they've got a bang average manager, in my opinion, who I don't think will be there at Christmas. And I'm not just saying that because I don't like him and because he's ex-Liverpool. I genuinely don't think he's very good. They've got a defence there that can be exploited, and unfortunately Everton didn't exploit it. I mean, every single time Tyrone Mings had the ball at his feet, he shit himself. He absolutely shit himself. Tyrone Mings is he's a big lad. If you're going shoulder to shoulder with him, then he'll bounce you. If you're going up in the air with him, then he'll probably win that battle as well. But if the ball is at his feet and you are attacking him, you are running at him, you are putting him under pressure, he will panic. And he showed that on 3, 4, 5 occasions the other day. Every single time he had the ball at his feet, he shit himself. He kicked it out, or he panicked, or he made a bad decision because he just doesn't like having the ball at his feet. That's the type of things that I just think Everton need to do a little bit better at sort of getting onto that and exploiting it a little bit more, whether it be with a defender, whether it be with a midfielder, whoever it's with. Everton need to be better at exploiting opposition teams' weaknesses. And for me, Aston Villa's weakness is Tyrone Mings. And that's not just coming from me having watched them for 90 minutes on the weekend. You know, you're talking about a lad who's been stripped of the Aston Villa captaincy, who seems to have had all sorts of fallings out with Steven Gerrard, who's been in and out the team like a hot potato because of his performances in recent years. His confidence will be shot. His future at the football club is up in the air. Why didn't we use all of that to constantly get at him? Add that to the fact that he is woeful with the ball at his feet. Absolutely woeful. Why didn't we use that to get at him? I'll never, ever, ever know, because we must have ran at him 3 times, and every single time he made a dreadful decision with the ball at his feet, and then we just wouldn't do it. We wouldn't do it again. We'd leave him to make a decision. It's like we go, oh no, he's a bit shit him, so we'll give him an extra bit of time. I don't know. I don't know, but as I said, we were looking relatively comfortable. I don't think we were in too much problem. Don't think there was too much of a problem. Yes, they were looking the more likely to score. Yes, they were looking the more in control, but I think that sort of suited Everton. Then we get what we get every week, don't we, at the moment? And I seen an article before which just made me absolutely laugh. It was hilarious. It was something written along the lines of Liverpool's injury crisis being the worst in the Premier League, and I just read it and thought, we've literally had 2 games of a Premier League season. We've lost our striker, we've lost 2 of our starting 3 centre-halves, and we've lost one of our starting 2 midfielders. Now, we've literally lost the entire spine of a team within the opening 2 weeks of the season. Liverpool have lost about 3 players, one of which is a squad player who never plays anyway. So I'm not really sure where this whole nonsense comes from, but, you know, again, 20 odd minutes into a game, Abdoulaye Doucouré goes down, and you could see straight away that it wasn't going to happen for him, couldn't you? You could see straight away that he was going to have to come off. He hobbles off, and Frank Lampard makes the decision to bring Tom Davies on. Now, I was a little bit surprised with this. I was. Now, you could say, well, why be surprised if you expected Onana to not start anyway? Why would he not start and then all of a sudden be available to come on after, you know, whatever it was, 20 odd minutes? I'm not sure. Let me get a look at the exact timings that Abdoulaye Doucouré was taken off. Can I get the timings that Abdoulaye Doucouré was taken off? Yes, I will get them now. He was taken off. Where are we? Pardon me. Pardon me. He was taken off after their goal, so 33 minutes in, so half an hour into the game, he was taken off. So obviously it come after the goal. I thought it come before the goal for some reason. But Frank Lampard made the decision to bring Tom Davies on. Now, you could say, okay, half an hour into the game, maybe Onana still wasn't ready for it. I don't really buy that, to be honest. Listen, in an ideal world, Onana wouldn't have had to have come on at that time because you know, in an ideal world, Abdoulaye Doucouré wouldn't have picked up an injury. But the reality is, we don't live in an ideal world, and Abdoulaye Doucouré picked up an injury, and for that, I think that was the time to give Amadou Onana his Everton debut, not with 10 minutes to go, because what was quite evident when Amadou Onana come onto the pitch was that he changed the game. Now, yes, he had a part to play in their second goal, of course he did, because he lost the ball in midfield, but very minimal part, by the way. He lost the ball near enough on the halfway line, and then 3 or 4 Everton players completely allowed the counter-attack to go. Tarkowski is standing in no man's land on the edge of the box for a start, so I refused to sit in and go, it was all Onana, because it wasn't. But other than that, he single-handedly created our goal by picking the ball up, absolutely bulldozing through it, you know, and doing really, really well with the ball on the line, getting it across and forcing Luca Dean to make the tackle. And he very nearly scored the second, forced a great save out of Martinez. So I just don't understand why he wasn't brought on for Abdoulaye Doucouré. He seemed like much more of a natural replacement to Abdoulaye Doucouré, and that, I'm not saying that because I think Tom Davies had a particularly bad game. I actually don't think Tom Davies played too poorly, to be honest with you. I think he looked okay. He made a couple of bad, passes and a couple of rough decisions. But for the most part, I actually think Tom Davies played, again, dare I say, relatively well. Not unbelievable, but he wasn't particularly awful either. But I just think being able to bring on somebody of Amadou Onana's size and presence and threat at that time, I think would have just been would have been a massive help. I really, really do. And Frank Lampard decided not to go with that, evidently because he didn't think he was ready. If he's not ready to play, an hour, then why is he on the bench for me? I don't really buy into this. Our players are on the bench because they're ready to play 10, 15 minutes at the end of the game. If you're on the bench for me, you should at least be able to play an hour's worth of football. And I think Amadou Onana would have been able to play an hour's worth of football, if I'm being honest with you. But as I said, before the injury, which again, another injury, shock, we conceded the goal, of course. We actually had a goal go in before we conceded the goal. It was a corner that was swung in. Tarkowski flicked it on, and Anthony Gordon, who was stood in an offside position, Luca Dean actually playing him offside, which was interesting. Anthony Gordon smashed it into the back of the net. The away end went absolutely bonkers. We all thought we'd gone 1-0 up, and then all of a sudden the offside flag goes up. I haven't actually seen the goal again because on the highlights it didn't show it. But from where I was sat, it looked like a perfectly good goal. It looked like a perfectly good goal from where I was sat. However, again, I haven't seen a replay, and we were sat at the complete other end of the pitch, to be fair. So I wasn't quite sure where Luca Dean was standing. But anyway, it was ruled offside. But it was the first sort of showing of a positive attack from Everton. It was the first sort of, okay, we're getting forward. We're we come from a corner, but the corner was won well. And we've taken a chance. It was offside, but we're doing well defensively at this point. Aston Villa had very, very little. They had one or two sort of half chances. They had a corner where they had a free header from, I believe, and it was headed over. But other than that, they didn't really have much. And we'd gone up the other end, and we'd showed that we could break, we could break through them and create an opportunity. Then, a couple of minutes later, Aston Villa go up the other end of the pitch, and Danny Ings, who I don't know why I wasn't surprised at the time, because Danny Ings literally scores against Everton every single time he plays against Everton. I don't think Danny Ings has ever played against Everton and not scored. Ball comes in, fullback, I can't remember, it was Michalenko or Nathan Patterson. It was Michalenko, I think, caught completely lacking. Ball goes into the box. Danny Ings firstly picks it up running away from goal, then turns inside, then knocks it past the defender and fires with his left foot. And to be fair, it's a great shot. It's a great effort. Connor Cody can get nowhere near it. It goes completely through Decore, I think, just before he went off. And it goes through Jordan Pickford into the net. And I think when I said before about us setting up to not concede and then conceding and having this moment of, right, where do we go from here? I think that sort of settled in, certainly with the fans that were stood in the away end next to me. It was almost like it wasn't an air of, well, we've conceded, but we've still got, an hour to go of football here. Let's get back into this game. Obviously, there was those thoughts, but I think a lot of Blues around us were very much like, we haven't got any threat here. This front three for the opening half an hour, okay, we just scored an offside goal, but it come from a corner. Other than that, we'd had no sort of real attacking presence in the game whatsoever. So as soon as we conceded, it was very much like, where is a goal coming from? I think that was the big thought on everybody's mind. Okay, how do we get back into this game? There was always that chance, because you can always nick a goal from a corner or from a mistake or whatever. But the big thing was, we've conceded now. The game plan was to not concede. Well, we've conceded now, so where does the game change? And that, for me, and listen, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and we can sit here all we like and talk about what I'd have done or what the manager should have done or what he could have done. But that, for me, is probably where I'd have changed it at half-time. We've gone 1-0 down. Decore's had to come off. I'd have personally put Onana on for Decore, and then I'd have taken off either Damari Gray or Anthony Gordon, probably Damari Gray, and put Solomon Rondon on at half-time and said, well, okay, we're losing 1-0 now, so we've got to go for it. We've got to change something because them three aren't working up front. Change something and go and try and push for an for an equaliser in the second half. And I think had Frank Lampard have done that with more than 10 minutes to go, I don't think we'd have lost that game of football. I think had he have brought Solomon Rondon on at half-time and put Onana on instead of Tom Davies, I think we could have even won that game, but we definitely would have drawn it because we just looked so much more comfortable and so much more organised when Rondon was at centre forward, because shock horror, he's a centre forward and the other three aren't. But we come out for half time, and again nothing's really changed. Tom Davies, as I said, is doing okay. He's picking the ball up, he's moving it around. He's not particularly making any sort of mistake, but he's not having any impact on the game either. And that was the difference when Onana come on, I think, to Tom, is that Tom Davies had no impact on the game whatsoever, whereas Onana, in the 10 minutes that he was on, had a massive impact in the game. And that is the reason as to why I'd have had him on from the start. If you are enjoying, by the way, please hit that like button. 80 people watching. If you could get the likes up, that would be amazing. If you are new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe. But yeah, we were sort of just going through the motions at that point. We were 1-0 down. We'd had Damari Gray had a couple of half chances. He had one where it fell to him in the box and he just couldn't sort his feet out. And if you needed any more proof that he wasn't a natural goal scorer, then there it was, because it literally fell to him in the perfect position, the perfect angle, the perfect time. And if he'd have been able to sort his feet out, he'd have got a shot on goal and it would have almost certainly have gone in and we'd have been level. He had another one where he cuts inside on his right foot and he hits it and it's straight at the goalkeeper. But other than that, there wasn't really much going on, was there? Until Frank Lampard made the changes, which come for me, as I said, half an hour, 40 minutes too late. We were just sort of, again, it was similar to before it went to 1-0, only we weren't in a position where we could sit here and say, well, okay, we're defending a point, and if we get a point, it's not too bad. If we can nick a winner, then brilliant. We were almost defending being beaten. And then Frank Lampard makes the changes. We bring on Amadou Onana, we bring on Solomon Rondon, and all of a sudden, we look a lot better. We've got a presence in midfield. Now, at this point, for me, I think, other than Nathan Patterson and Alex Iwobi, who I thought were the two standouts, and I actually thought Alex Iwobi was fantastic again at the weekend, other than them two, everybody else was just, they may as well have been sat next to us. They were having absolutely no effect on the game whatsoever. They were doing nothing. They were simply doing nothing. And then we brought on Onana and we brought on Solomon Rondon, and all of a sudden, we had another presence in midfield, because, as I said, Tom Davies wasn't a presence whatsoever. So we had the movement of Iwobi, we had the physicality and the presence of Onana, and we had a striker up front that we were able to hit balls up to. All of a sudden, Tarkowski's balls and, Connor Cody's balls up, and obviously Connor Cody went off towards the end of the game as well. And Holgate's balls up. All of a sudden, they weren't just coming straight back at us. They were being held up. They were being knocked down. They were being brought into play. And then, unfortunately, we can see the second goal. Onana is caught, dribbling in the midfield. Ball gets taken off him. But again, as I said, there's much more to it than just Onana having the ball taken off him in midfield. Defensively, it's a shocking goal to concede. It's far too easy for Aston Villa to break through us. Tarkowski standing nowhere near where he should be standing. Ball gets put across. Ollie Watkins gets in there, puts it across the box, and Buendia taps it in for what will be the easiest goal of his career. And all of a sudden, Aston Villa are 2-0 up. And at that point, I think it very much settled in that we weren't going to get anything out of the game, because I remember sitting here thinking we might nick a goal. Scoring two with this Everton team at the moment, with that front three, is like, it's you may as well look out your window and expect to see a flying pig, as opposed to expect an Everton to score twice. But we very nearly did, which is ironic. Instantly after conceding the second goal, it was almost like Amadou Onana thought, shit, I was probably a little bit at fault for that, so I'm going to make up for it. He picks the ball up. He absolutely bulldozes his way through the centre midfield. He gets it to the byline. He does really, really well with the ball at his feet, cuts inside, puts a ball across the box, and effectively it's there for Alex Iwobi to tap in. But Luca Dean decides that he loves the football club that much that he wanted to score one last goal for Everton, probably because he was getting booed all afternoon by the away end. But Luca Dean slides in, it comes off of him, and and we end up getting one back. And all of a sudden, we've gone from 2-0 down with no attacking threat and no hope of getting anything to, 7-10 minutes to go, pulling one back, and all of a sudden the momentum is on us. And then we stepped it up a little bit then. That's when we actually look like, we could possibly go and get, a goal or create an opportunity. And that's where the most frustrating thing comes from, because I've said this time and time again about Everton. There was games last season where we did this, and there's been, I've supported Everton for 23 years, and I can't even count how many times I've witnessed this exact situation where we're 1-0 down for a sustained period of time. We have absolutely no involvement in the game whatsoever. We don't look like scoring. We don't look like creating. We go 2-0 down, and then all of a sudden, we're 2-0 down, we've got 10 minutes to go, and that last 10 minutes, we're at it. We're chasing the ball down, we're winning it back, we're creating chances, we're battling, and I just don't get why we can't do that when we initially go 1-0 down, as opposed to waiting until the very end of a game when we've got, very little opportunity of getting back into it. But we did do that. We, as I said, we got at them, we pulled one back, and then we were getting forward then we were pressing them. They were doing this the typical tactic that only ever seems to be picked up when Everton players do it, but when other clubs do it, it seems to be, it doesn't really seem to be talked about, or it seems to be respected. Time wasting is what I'm referring to. Martinez keeping hold of the ball for 15 minutes in his hands. Villa players throwing themselves on the floor, having cramp, picking up slight knocks, slight injuries, all of this sort of stuff. When it's Everton players doing it, they're screamed at by the commentators to get up and stop embarrassing themselves. When it's other teams doing it, it doesn't get mentioned. It's game management, which again further proves the issue that a lot of people have with Everton Football Club for some reason. But Villa were doing their very, very best to slow the game down and to sort of suck all of that momentum out of our play. But we still had the odd opportunity. We still had one or two chances to equalise. As I said, a ball fell to Amadou Onana in the box. He gets a shot away with his left foot, and it's an absolutely wonderful, wonderful save by Martinez to deny him. And it then goes out for a corner. Every corner we put in that last 5 minutes was collected, because it was just far too easy of a height for a goalkeeper that is 6'2", 6'3", maybe even more, 6'5", whatever he is. So they were wasted, but we were pressing them, and as I said before, I do feel like had we have had an extra 5-10 minutes in that game, we would have got an equaliser. And Anthony Gordon had a couple of efforts. He had one where he hit it on the volley and it just flashed past the goal. He had one where he hit it straight to the goalkeeper and he made a save. But all of a sudden, in the final 10 minutes of the game, we look like threatening. We look like getting a goal back, and that's where the frustration comes from. Is why couldn't we have looked like that for the for the opening hour of the game, when we went 1-0 down, or from 33 minutes onwards when we were 1-0 down. But we didn't. We only managed to pull one back. As I said, we had a couple of half chances after that. Villa just slowed the game down, and time wasted and sorted out. And the final whistle obviously went, and Everton had suffered the second defeat in a game that I think was more frustrating because they were there for the taking. They were very, very, very beatable. Very, very, very beatable. They're not a great team whatsoever. Regardless of what anybody else says, I don't care what anybody else says, they're not a very good team whatsoever. And they've got some really good players, and they've got a great little stadium, and they've got a good fan base, but they're not a very good team. And they were a team that, had we have had a striker, or had Frank Lampard have set up a little bit differently, I actually think we'd have got something out of that game. I really, really do. And now it puts an unnecessary amount of pressure on Saturday against Nottingham Forest. Listen, as I said, we're far too early on in the season to be talking about must-win games and jobs on the line and all that sort of nonsense. But the reality is, football is a very, 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 very forgiving sport. And if Everton lose on Saturday, we've then got 2 away games in Brentford and Leeds, and a game against Fleetwood away from home in the Cup in between. before our next home game, which is the Merseyside derby. Now, knowing what our away record is like, if we don't win on Saturday, we could very easily be going into that Merseyside derby without a win, which is our 7th Premier League game of the season, 6th Premier League game of the season. So, Saturday is massive. It's massive. It's as simple as that. We need to win it. And hopefully, we will either have a striker in by then, or Frank will see that, you know, that front three doesn't work. And even though we might want to go with Rondon, it's the best option to do that. Let's get into the comments then. Damien says, cheers Cam, got to go, take care. Cheers mate. Liam says, what's his name? Onana. Liam also says, I'd take Diaz from Blackburn. I think he's strong enough to cut it in the Prem, and I think he could do a job replacing Richie. He's got something about him. We still need another attacking though. Yeah, Everton obviously being linked with Diaz, Everton Diaz from Blackburn today. Yeah, I think he's a relatively good player. His goals in the Championship last season were absolutely fantastic. He's also become somewhat of a star for Chile as well. Whether or not there's anything in this other than just a rumour, I don't know. Would I be confident of him coming in and being our out-and-out goal scorer, replacement for Dom, etc., or Richie? No. But I think if we can get him for the right price, he'd be a really smart bit of business. Queensby says, why are we so shit? I wish I knew the answer. Up the top, he says, Onana is a special player and you can see it. Mike says, Rondon must start on Saturday. Anthony says, Cam, I've watched us for 40 years. The last 20 years, we can't play tactically for 90 minutes under Moyes. 80 minutes, the last 10 minutes defend, possibly lose the game. Now we just can't play. Yeah, it seems that way, doesn't it? Alex says, sell Dom at the January transfer window, bring in Lozano from Napoli as a Gordon replacement. Herman Lozano, when we were linked with him a couple of years ago. How old is he now? How old is he now? Gavin says, the question on Diaz for me is Ellis Sims. Look like he'll score 20 goals in the Championship. Would you play Sims for Everton? Ellis Sims won't score the same amount as what Everton Diaz scored last season. He won't. And if he does, then fair play to him. And if he does, then he'll be playing for Everton next season. But I'm not sure he will. I'm not sure he will. Anyway, look, we are going to finish it there then. If you have enjoyed this one, please do hit that like button. Another defeat for Frank Lampard. Again, it is only the second game of the season, so I'm trying not to get too carried away with it or too worried about it. But it does make this game on Saturday quite important and you know, a must win in the sense of we need a win to build some confidence and, you know, to make us all happy, don't we? Because 2 defeats on the bounce isn't very happy. It doesn't make us very happy. We all know we need to strike it in before then. Whether we'll have one in or not is a different question, but we are so desperate for the striker. It's unbelievable. But anyway, look, we are going to finish it there then. Massive thank you to everybody for getting involved in the live comments. I really do appreciate it. If you watch us a YouTube video, leave your thoughts down below and we'll get involved with as many of them as we can. If you've enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. Massive thank you all for watching, and we'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues.